Virginia taxpayers were told data centers would finally pay their fair share. But Bloomberg Tax reported that industry lobbyists offered a smaller tax to protect a tax break worth nearly $2 billion, which, if you guys remember on a couple of videos ago, that's exactly what we talked about. But now we have the actual details. And especially if you live in Hampton, that deal matters now because our city is preparing for its own data center rules. And by the end of this video, you will understand how the state deal worked, what Hampton is doing now, and the three questions we need answered before those rules are written. So, on July 6, 2026, Bloomberg Tax published a deep dive by Mr. Daniel Moore, explaining how Virginia data centers, the industry, preserved its sales tax exemption during the state budget fight. Like I said, I know you all remember the video. A sales tax exemption is basically a rule that allows qualifying data centers to avoid paying sales tax on all major equipment and other purchases that they use. Some lawmakers wanted that exemption repealed. The industry could see the pressure building. So when any industry sees pressure building, the lobbyists come out. So lobbyists proposed, and in this specific example, the lobbyists proposed a new consumption tax, a tax based on how much electricity a data center uses. That may sound like the industry surrendered. It did not. That was not generosity. That was strategy. Where we always talked about that was a strategy. The industry accepted a smaller tax to protect the much larger tax break. The new electricity tax is expected to collect about $1.2 billion over 2 years, or roughly $600 million a year. Bloomberg Tax reported that the exemption saved the industry about $2 billion in the last fiscal year. Other estimates have placed it in the annual value between 1.6 billion to 1.9 billion, which that's the number that I've been using, and Axios gave that number. Depending on which estimate you use, the industry may still keep roughly 1 billion to 1.4 billion more in annual tax benefits than it will pay through the new tax. That is the difference between paying something and paying enough, right? We had the conversation. We literally talked about it. Now, I want you to hear how Governor Abigail Spanberger explained the deal.
To pay their fair share. The way to get at that is by ensuring that they're paying this consumption tax, so based on their energy consumption. Right? We have entire communities where the school, the libraries, the fire station, is principally being funded because of the types of investments that are coming to that community. And so where we landed with the budget is creating this kind of first of its kind consumption tax, where if the challenge that we're trying to address at this moment with the budget is the fact that we want data centers to pay their fair share, the way to get at that is by ensuring that they're paying this consumption tax, so based on their energy consumption. And then we can couple that into the future with longer term views of what are the standards that we want to set in Virginia for water usage, for backup energy generation? How can we continue to be a place where we are innovating? But there are interim things, fuel cell backups and other types of innovation that we want to drive here in Virginia.
Here is where we separate the talking point from the truth. The talking point is that this consumption tax makes data centers pay their fair share. The truth is that the larger tax break survived. You cannot collect about $600 million and then leave another $1 billion or more in tax benefits untouched and act like as though the fair share question has been settled. No, it hasn't. It has not. Like this is the most frustrating part about this whole thing, honestly. It's frustrating because we're talked to by the leader that we voted in. And mind you, we've already had this conversation long before that politics is like public transportation. Politics is, to me, politics is not a wholesome thing. Meaning, if it's one thing, no. And the two options that we had for governor, hey, that's what we have right now. But it is not. The governor also pointed to communities where data centers investment helps support schools, libraries, fire stations, and other public services. Those local benefits are real, and they can be real. But a local benefit does not erase a larger state subsidy. The money Virginia is choosing not to collect could support those same services while also helping healthcare, housing, infrastructure, utility pressure, all of these things across the Commonwealth. So the question is not whether data centers contribute anything. Never heard me ask that, nor will you ever see me ask that. The question is whether Virginia accepted too little while protecting too much for the data centers. Now, a Virginia resident challenged the governor about that directly. Listen to her question and watch this interaction.
I've heard your speech about the data centers, but I'm concerned about them. I mean, do you think that it's a good idea to be giving out billions of dollars?
I think the challenge is it's not giving out.
But Virginians are losing out on their Medicaid and their SNAP benefits.
Yes, ma'am. And the important benefit that comes is the local property tax. If you look at the county like the one that we're in.
But Virginia's losing out on billions of dollars. People are going hungry.
So I think
downwardly mobile economically.
Okay, but you
and I'm really asking for you to find families on data centers. You can still be the hero, Governor Sandberger. Ma'am, this is an overwhelmingly popular policy.
Governor, is there a chance? I'm chair of Loudoun County Democrats. Can we take a quick
You can be the hero, Governor. Please find families, not data centers, tax billionaire companies that still work for Virginians, not corporations that should be paying their sales tax just as much as Virginians do. Virginians are paying more sales tax. Working families.
That resident was not asking a partisan question. She was asking a taxpayer question. What do we receive? What are we giving up? And why should working Virginians pay sales taxes while some of the wealthiest companies in the world continue to receive a massive exemption? I have said before that voting is like public transportation again. You choose the route moving closest to where you believe we should go, knowing you may not agree with every stop. This is one of those stops where I strongly disagree with Governor Spanberger. Not because of her party, not because of anything personal. I disagree because the numbers do not support calling this a fair share. Whenever someone challenges the exemption, we also hear the same warning. The companies will leave. They will go somewhere else. Virginia will lose future investment. Companies can place future projects in other states. That is true. But that does not mean Virginia has no leverage. The fiber network energy connections are already here. Workforce, even though workforce is small, like you have some hyperscale centers that only employ 150 permanent people. Relationships, customers, land investment, and supporting businesses ecosystem took decades to build. We didn't just get 530 plus data centers out of nowhere. So they will not simply pack those up. That's just not even realistic in terms of doing. Just think about that, right? They want you to believe that billions of dollars of infrastructure would just disappear because Virginia asked for a better deal. Future investment should be taken seriously, but fear should not end the negotiation before it begins. Public policy should not be negotiated from fear. It should be built on facts. Now let's bring Hampton back home to this. Let's bring it on back home. On July 8th, Hampton City Council received an informational briefing on the digital infrastructure and data centers that we talked about before, where they were trying to soften the name data centers to digital infrastructure because of the negative connotation that data centers has. I will not let that go. There is no specific data center project currently before the city. So I want to make sure that you all understand that. There is no site approval. There is no final zoning vote. But what Hampton and Newport News are studying is the issue that both cities want clear zoning rules before a developer arrives. Zoning simply means the local rules that decide what can be built and where. The cities want to prevent a future applicant from arguing that a data center should be treated like an ordinary office or a warehouse. That is an amazing, responsible goal. And Councilman Randy Bowman openly said, Council began this process without deep knowledge of data centers. I respect that honesty. Because complicated issues require leaders who are willing to admit that they do not know, ask questions, and get help. So make sure this is crystal clear. The concern is not and will never be that Hampton is learning. That's not it. The concern is who is teaching the class, what perspective they bring, and whether the classroom includes the full range of evidence. Because also what we saw in that work session, the city hired Southern Institute of Research, SIR, to help study the issue. The presentation contained much useful information in explaining it. It separated smaller facilities from hyperscale campuses, the largest type of data center complex. It acknowledged that hyperscale facilities can consume extraordinary amounts of electricity while creating relatively few permanent on-site jobs. The consultant also said Hampton and the peninsula likely cannot support a hyperscale facility. If that remains the conclusion after the full study, put that limit into the zoning rules. Write it into the language. Do not leave it as a reassuring sentence in a presentation. The framing also deserves attention. Noise from a data center was compared to a nearby daycare. Here we go with that again. I promise you, I'm so tired and frustrated of entities coming in front of our council doing this. It's frustrating as heck. Average hyperscale noise was compared to a busy street or a vacuum cleaner. Public concerns were discussed alongside of myths and perceptions. Now, Hampton was described as proactive rather than reactive, while other Virginia localities have already placed strict limits on larger facilities like hyperscale facilities. And that does not automatically mean the information was false, but framing matters. If you all don't learn anything from me, you have to learn that framing matters. When counsel is learning about a complicated industry, the presenter not only is sharing facts, the person is also helping shape the lens through which those facts are understood. City Manager Mary Bunton later clarified that being proactive means creating definitions and protections before a specific proposal arrives. That explanation makes perfect sense. She also set an important standard for the process. Hampton cannot simply accept industry claims about systems such as closed-loop water cooling. Closed-loop cooling is designed to reuse water rather than constantly drawing new water into the system. But the city still has to research and verify how those systems would work. That is exactly right. Spot on. Apply that same standard to power demand, water use, noise, permanent jobs, tax revenue, and infrastructure costs. Then publish who pays if upgrades are needed or the projections are wrong. The city should hear from the industry, but the classroom must be bigger than the industry and one consultant. Hampton should also hear from independent experts, localities that welcome data centers, localities that place the strict restrictions and limits on them, and people who are already live near those facilities. All right. Which that's, and I want to give full clarity too. That's what the city manager said this person will do. Do I trust it? Not really, but we're going to see further. And then number two, one of the key aspects for me is she said that there would at least be, and I think Councilman Bowman had a question with that. I'm not sure, but I know City Manager Bunton specifically said there will at least be 2 public hearing, interest, learning sessions so that the public can learn everything that they learned. So, 100% for it. Kudos, Hampton. Kudos, City of Hampton. That is spot on. Now, if a future site could affect your neighborhood, you should be involved in before the zoning language has already taken shape. Right? So, Richmond showed us what can happen when the public gets the full math and a full information after the political deal is already moving. Hampton still has the opportunity to show its work before the rules are written. So, I'm looking forward to it. Before that happens, though, you deserve clear answers to 3 questions. First is the basic question. What types and size data centers would Hampton allow? And that's easy because, like the gentleman stated, that it's potentially not going to be hyperscale based on the size and whatnot. Okay, that's understandable. Where could they be placed? And what public review would each one require? Now, so when you hear me say that third one, well, even though this is all the first question, when you hear me say what public review, I'm speaking about during each separate one. I'm not talking about the at least 2 public reviews that have already been promised. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking specifically about when each comes up and wants to build a center. Is it going to be the standard normal protocol where Planning Commission has a public section and then council has a public session, or will there be special different meetings for that in reference to the public? That's the first question. I know it's a lot. Second, what would Hampton specific impact be on electricity, water, noise, roads, and flooding? It's deeper than that, but those are just common courtesy questions. And then third, who will independently verify the claims, and will we see the studies, assumptions, possible incentives, consultant recommendations, and draft zoning language before City Council votes? Those questions are not anti-technology. Those are responsible government questions, and you know how I love responsible government questions. I want Hampton to grow. I want our universities, healthcare systems, military, which they already have their own data centers, the military that is, and some universities do as well, because again, there's different sizes, but installations and local businesses to have access to the digital infrastructure they need. But modern language cannot substitute for measurable public benefit. Calling something digital infrastructure does not answer what it costs, where it goes, who benefits, or who carries the risk. A name does not answer your concerns. The state story is our warning. It's the biggest red flag that you can ever have. The Hampton story is our opportunity. Government does not earn trust by asking people to believe. Government earns trust by showing its work. Show us the math, show us the studies, show us who verified the claims. Then let us judge whether the policy truly serves Hampton. When Hampton schedules its public roundtables, bring these 3 questions with you. Ask for the studies, ask to see the assumptions, and ask what protections will be written into the rules before any project arrives. Because again, me and you need protection. We need protection over any company. We will only get protection inside of that ordinance's language. That is how we keep public clarity ahead of private momentum. Because growth is not good simply because it sounds modern. Growth has to serve us. This information is free, and it will stay free. No paywall. I don't gatekeep, so no gatekeeping. But while the education is free, the work behind it is not. Researching these issues, reviewing public documents, producing these videos, and making sure more people understand what is happening, it all takes real, tangible resources. So, if this video helped you understand the issue and you believe more people deserve this kind of public clarity, consider supporting the movement financially. There's going to be the link that's in the actual description, the link in the pinned comment, or there's also going to be a QR code which you can scan with your phone on the video as well. Again, the education will remain free. The movement still needs resources. No pressure, just purpose.